And as part of this, I want to show how these Sunday speaker series align with our values. The value of environmentalism, that I will take care of the earth and the life on it. The value of global awareness, I will be a good neighbor to the people who share the earth with me and help to make the world a better place for everyone. And the value of ethical development, I will always focus on becoming a better person. Colin Tetreault is an accomplished sustainability, business, policy, and senior scholar practitioner and faculty member for ASU's School of Sustainability. He drives revenue and sparks innovation, mitigates and manages risks, and advances brands and causes. He has served as the senior policy advisor of sustainability to Mayor Stanton of Phoenix, the highest appointed sustainability position in the state of Arizona. He continues to serve the community as the chair of the Environmental Quality and Sustainability Commission at the city of Phoenix, the most prominent citizen-appointed body in Arizona. He is based in Phoenix, where he is the significant beneficiary of his wife's poor taste in men, enjoys the well-crafted Scottish ale, and has found his true calling in life, being a father to his young son, Connor Tennyson, and his young daughter, Madeline Millay. Colin is recognized as a 40 under 40 by the Phoenix Business Journal, an Earth Day awardee by Keep Phoenix Beautiful, a TED speaker, served as a chairman on the Final Four 2017 Sustainability Committee, and takes his work very seriously, but never himself. Please give a great HSGP welcome to Colin Tetreault.
Oh, thank you. Yes. No, really. Yes, come on, bring it on. That's right. All right, good morning. Pardon, bear with me while I just switch over here to my other little presentation gig. Let's toss in that. We're going to have a good time today. Right over here. Is it mirror?
Yep.
All right, look at that. Technology. It works, ladies and gentlemen. Hot dog. Okay. Well, no promises. We're going to do what we can, okay? Man, this is a tough audience already. I like it. Well, good morning. My name is Colin. It's a pleasure to be with all of you here today. Thank you for letting me do such. We're going to have a fun time today. Yes, I am a faculty member at ASU's School of Sustainability, so we will have engagement. I will encourage discussion. I welcome all questions, unless those questions are framed in the manner of a 5-minute personal diatribe that is not actually a question, right? We're going to stay on point. I understand some of you are particularly active and like to contribute. I welcome that, but if you get too hot, I'm going to put you on the back burner to simmer, okay? Right? I'll treat you like one of my vociferous undergrads. So my name is Colin. I'm a faculty member over at ASU. Here's our agenda for today. I'll give you a bit of background, case for why. We're going to talk about some of the big three. You're going to understand what that is. We're going to talk about table stakes. Anyone here like to play poker or blackjack? Wonderful. Table stakes for business and table stakes for cities moving forward. And then I'm going to expand something within an energy sector, considering this is a big thing in the world. It's actually one of the big four that I talk about. And then guess what? We're going to live the dream. Everyone okay with that? All right, a little bit of a background here on myself. Thank you for the kind introduction. So yes, this is me. That's my personal outreach and information. Yes, I am at ASU. I am a born and bred Sun Devil. Did anyone here make poor life decisions and choices and go to U of A? Okay, good. First off, we're on the same page, right? No, it's okay. I love U of A as an educational institution. I just hate them on the basketball court and the football field. I am a born and bred Sun Devil. I went to kindergarten at Arizona State in the Child Development Laboratory, right? My mother was a faculty. I'm not kidding. This is the place where they do like experiments on children, right? No, honest to God, it is. You know the delayed gratification test with a cookie? So this is what they do, right? And this is an IRB. This is kind of the Institutional Review Board. They put a kid alone in a room. Like the cruelest thing you can do to a 4-year-old, right? They stick you in alone, totally sterile room. And what do? They put a cookie right on the middle of the table. And they say, Colin, you can eat the cookie, but if you wait 5 minutes, you can have 3 cookies. And what do? Close the door and walk away. and they watch you behind the single-sided mirror, right? And they see some kids are like, some kids like smell the cookie, right? But these are long-term experiments that help predict, right, compulsive behavior, right? And how that longitudinally, whether it gives us self-control in life or not. What do you all think I did? Oh, really? Judgy. I like it. Okay, we'll save that answer till the very end. So, yes, I went to ASU. I did my undergraduate there. I was Sparky, right, for a period of time. I met my wife at Arizona State University. She was a Sparky. She was student body president. She was also a cheerleader with Pat Tillman. Did my graduate degree there. Correct. I have a 6-foot totem of Sparky in the backyard. My 6 and 4, I'm not joking, my 6 and 4-year-old, every time I sing goodnight to my 4-year-old, my daughter Madeline Millay. Anyone, by the way, know the genesis of her middle name? Quiz time. Edna St. Vincent Millay, ESV Millay, right? SV Millay. And Connor Tennyson, Alfred Lord Tennyson, correct. Nerd parents, right? Obviously. So every time I sing goodnight to them, I say, what songs do you want? She's like, You Are My Sunshine and Fight Devils. We sing the fight song as a lullaby in the house. It's crazy. So at ASU, I focus mainly on things like corporate strategy and public policy. So I am not a professor. Here's the big giveaway. I don't hold a PhD in sustainability. Now, I do have an advanced degree in this area. I am more like a professor of practice. So I'm a guy that spends time out in the real world doing stuff, bringing it back for our seniors and our grad students. So there are colleagues of mine that are infinitely more intelligent, but they can't speak the language outside of the university. So when I used to work for the city of Phoenix, serving his Honorable Mayor Greg Stanton, my job chiefly was to be like chief translator in charge. I would listen to, understand, and I can keep up with all of my colleagues. Okay, could you repeat that in English, please? Thank you very much. Beep, boop, beep, put it through the Rosetta Stone, go in front of the mayor and say, all right, Mayor, here's the 3 things of what this really means. This is how we create actionable positions and movement. Outside of that, I do some sports work. So you cannot tell from this aging, semi-cherubic, corpulent dad bod in front of you. I would have been very popular in Rubin's time, right? I'm actually a global sports scholar. Again, that's self-deprecating humor, right? Remember Rubin painted the voluptuous nudes and things like that, right? I've been very popular as a little cherub, right? I do sports and sustainability consulting. Anyone here love sports? Anyone here hates, anyone here hates sports? But think about this. There are very few things in life that actually have an esprit de corps and the ability to connect people. Imagine, even if you don't like sports, you're sitting there in the final seconds of the 4th quarter at a basketball game. There's a fadeaway jumper, somebody hits it, and everybody celebrates. In that moment, you are all literally on, and metaphorically, the same team. Do you turn to the person next to you? You're like, yes, well done, great game, we're the champions. You shake hands. What do you do to the person next to you? You hug them, right? Now, is this like, oh, yes, it's very nice to meet you, good job, we're the winners? Or is it like an all-encompassing bear hug? Yep. Yes. Also, the 4 words, I love you, man, typically come out of somebody's mouth, right? Now, before you do that, do you say, pardon me, may I see your voter ID and registration card? Because I only hug liberals, thank you. You're not a humanist? Nope, can't talk to you, right? I say antithetical. We don't do that. Sports, more than anything else, gets rid of isms. Think about preaching all of the isms in life. Sport is a brand. Get rid of all of those. So I'm interested in using that power of community in order to drive change. I own and run my own business, so I do some work with Fortune 500 organizations outside of ASU. Starbucks, Intel, PetSmart, US Foods, Cox Enterprises. I provide them counsel on how to do well and do good. All right, let's move to the case for why. Why are we here today? This giant, beautiful thing called the blue pearl, right? In physics, we call this a closed-looped entropic system. There's only one thing that comes into the earth, and one thing only, broadly speaking. Anyone know what that is? Sunlight. And sunlight, ladies and gentlemen, pays the bills, right? Without sunlight, this whole place stops. Much like you, if you don't consume coffee and coffee cake in the morning, what happens, right? Things go downhill. Now, much like the earth without sunlight, we don't have energy in order to keep this thing going. Now, here's the fascinating thing. Nothing leaves. This is like a snow globe. Anyone have one of those weird aunts or uncles that's got like 50 snow globes, or maybe 500? Maybe you are that person, okay? Also correlates to number of cats in the house, right? High snow globes, high cats. Big joke. So it's like a snow globe. Only one thing comes in, everything stays. And it is actually up to us of what we want that snow globe to look like. Now, for some people, that can be incredibly terrifying and daunting. The challenges of a global climate crisis are real. Issues of gender stratification and subjugation in areas, global famine and poverty. These are difficult situations. But to me, one of the liberating things is that we get to choose. And what do we love more than anything in life? The opportunity to choose. What we eat, what kind of entertainment we like, what kind of sports teams or not we like. We get to choose this. It is up to us to choose the future of what we want the world to look like. And we only get one of them. Let's frame this again in a couple of different perspectives. Things like that, you can tell by the period in time. That's in Manhattan. Anyone know when that was taken? Which major storm? Superstorm Sandy. Let's frame things maybe alternatively. Because yes, the environmental value and proposition, I'm going to assume everyone here is broadly singing off the same sheet music. We like the environment here, yes? Environment good? Yes, environment good, yes, right. How about things like the economy? When you add, and remember Manhattan is at what sea level, or excuse me, what elevation? Give it away, sea level, gosh, Colin, got to work on my delivery. It's an island, it's right there. I want to frame the difference between Manhattan and the legal city of Phoenix. Pardon my Phoenix-centric nature here. The legal city of Phoenix, which is only one of 27 cities in this valley, has about 1.7 million people bedtime. It is spread over 520 square miles, 519 to be exact, technically larger than the city of Los Angeles. I want you to take all of that. Manhattan, the Big Apple. Who likes Manhattan? Good place, right? Catch a show, see the naked cowboy back in the day, right? All this sort of stuff. Still there. Doesn't look like it used to, right? All right? Sitting out there in the cold all that time in the humidity of Manhattan, man, it's looking like beef jerky, right? I want you to take all of Phoenix, 520 square miles. Manhattan has the exact same population, over 33 square miles. I want you to take all of Phoenix and put it 12 to 12, Van Buren to Northern. And I want you to add 3.5 feet of water. Outside of the human issues, think about the deleterious nature on the economy. When Superstorm Sandy hit, all of the global trading floors in Manhattan were closed. Do you think that is good for a global and even domestic economy? No. So think about the cost. So mitigation versus adaptation. If we stop doing this stuff now, sure, not gonna lie, it's expensive. That's a far cheaper proposition than moving the entire island of Manhattan elsewhere, right? So global economies. Anyone know where this is? This is a couple of years ago in Colorado. This is actually the Animas River outside of Durango. Anyone like that area? Kind of the southwestern portion of Colorado and the San Juans, right? Wonderful, splendid area. EPA contractors under Obama. Now, mind you, I like to poke holes at everyone. Everyone has skeletons in the closet. EPA contractors actually seeking to clean up some mines, accidentally poked a hole into an area, let out a whole bunch of really funky stuff. That is supposed to be crystal clear. It was like that for a week and a half. Now, mind you, that flushes down as a tributary into the Grand Canyon. Great. Where do we get a lot of our drinking water? Colorado River. Wonderful, right? All these heavy metals leaching from the earth, are they entirely gone from the Animas now? No, because what happens to things that are heavy? They sink, right? What happens every spring when it floods? They get pushed back up. Ecosystem is still recovering 8 years later. How about things like this? Open pit large mines. All of this stuff, we can say we talk about the environment, but part of these issues are interrelated. As we all talk on these wonderful little pocket computer devices, right? They have rare earth elements and materials in them. Strip mine, not just domestically, anything if you use it's copper. Freeport-McMoRan, as you fly east out of Sky Harbor, if you're taking a direct easterly departure, look down about 10 minutes as your flight lifts off. You see these wonderful blue-green pools. You're like, that's pretty. That's in the Globe Miami area, right? Those are trailing ponds of all of the open pit copper mines. Remember, when you burn copper in a flame, it precipitates out blue-green. You're actually looking at environmental waste on a massive scale right down the metaphorical street. So these issues are serious. You've even got concerns here about the third world. We sit here in a developed first world basis. Some of the work I've done over the years is actually in the country of Haiti. Has anyone ever been to a place like this? Truly the worst place in the entire Western Hemisphere. Everyone lives on 30 cents a day. This is a tropical rainforest island, ladies and gentlemen. They have 99% deforestation. 99. According to the United Nations, it is the second most corrupt place in the world to do business, aside from the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Central Africa. So what did we do about 8 years ago? Made a business there on actually trying to stop deforestation and reduce gender stratification and inequity. Now, do you ask a Haitian, hey, cutting down trees, don't you know this is bad? What do you think they're going to say? Actually, they all know. They're like, yeah, look at our place, it's destroyed. But they cut the trees down to make charcoal. They use the charcoal to cook not only food, but also to boil water to get rid of a bacterial thing called cholera, where you poop yourself to death in 3 days. It is real. So you ask them, do you want to destroy the environment or live? What do you think their answer is going to be? It's going to be live. Now, a traditional ecoist approach would be to come in and say, like, oh my God, don't you know cutting the trees down is bad? You should stop. Well, the Haitians already know that. How about this? If we invoke the Lorax, right? I speak for the trees. We need to replant trees, massive reforestation. This is correct and this is good. But are we solving the problem? That is a symptomatic solution, not a systemic one. Plant trees, guess what they're still doing? Cutting them down. You haven't solved the problem. So we found a solution. Look at old sugarcane. Remember, Napoleon sold Tommy J back in the day, not because he was a nice little short French guy, because he wanted to finance his war over sugar in Haiti. Sold Thomas Jefferson to Louisiana Purchase. Now, fast forward a whole bunch of years later, the chief export over the years of Haiti has been sugar. Actually, President Bill Clinton signed legislation that torpedoed Haiti's economy. Not on purpose. You actually asked the president, Mr. President, what are one of your chief regrets in office, aside from that other thing, actually, is this policy. Both sides, D's and R's, thought this was actually going to help the Haitian economy, actually torpedoed it. They don't export sugar anymore to the U.S. The chief purchaser of that. Instead, they turn it all into booze. They press it, ferment it, make moonshine. They then take all the leftover waste product and they stick it in big giant fields every now and then and light it on fire. So what did we do then? We actually took that extruded sugar cane, learned how to pyrolyze that, burn it in a low oxygen environment, turn it into charcoal. Now, mind you, normal charcoal for them looks like old little pieces of campfire wood, right? We actually got an old press from Kingsford and created 2,500 tons of this a day. I'll get to you in a sec. And at that point, we actually started to sell out. We started paying farmers for their waste product. When you went to the marketplace, our stuff looked like charcoal, right? It looks like Kingsford. It burned hotter, burned longer, and it cost less than the stuff that came from a tree. We employed women only in the entire sales and development marketing force, paying them 4 times an annual rate. So what did we start to solve? We actually put out of business in the entire northern part of the country all of the tree charcoal individuals, and those who were displaced, we gave them jobs in the factory, paying them more, working better hours with less risk to their life and safety. That is what sustainability does. Question? Thought?
Can you wait until you get a mic, please?
I wanted to know what the bill was that Clinton signed.
It was basically an import-export bill with regard to tariff and trade, essentially. So it was actually designed in order to provide sugar imports, but then the global markets got into their globalization, right? and actually torpedoed their economy. It was actually really unfortunate. Let's keep going. Case for why. I'm going to start pivoting here into what I like to call the big three. There are issues that are facing the world today on a global, domestic, regional, local basis that are providing constraint to operations. Things like shifting consumer preferences. Individuals now have better information, knowledge, and one heck of a motivating factor to ask, where is our stuff coming from? They're making more informed and better understood decisions as consumers. And because of that, their preferences are changing. While we are by no means all the way there, individuals are asking, is this better, benign, or bad for, say, the environment, the economy, and people? People are moving in that direction. International policy movement. There's this thing called Europe, ladies and gentlemen. You ever heard of the European Union? If you're British, you certainly have, right? Too soon? Anyone? Okay. So the EU, there's mandatory disclosure and reporting. If you're a business over a certain size, you are required to fill out sustainability reporting materials. How about in a place like California, where it was pushed from Europe over to California? If you're a publicly traded organization and you have a board of directors, 6 people and above, you have to have at least 2 females on your board. It's catalytic, right? There are policy issues that are constraining, whether you like them or not, how we actually operate. There are places that are at the leading edge of this, the narrow end of the wedge. If it's happening in Europe, which it is, it will come to California, and if it comes to California, eventually it will populate the rest of the US as well, in the entire Western world. So you've got constraining policy issues. You've got global economic and political catalysts. Anyone ever heard of China? Excuse me, another bad joke, sorry. How about 2 years ago when China made the really interesting decision all of a sudden from a global commodities basis to say, you know what? All your recycling, basically your trash, we don't want it anymore. What did that do to the entire global commodities, also known as recycling industry? Threw everyone into turmoil. Now, speaking to the guy, I actually created the city's long-term plan called Reimagine Phoenix, which has a zero waste strategy. It's called actually transforming trash into resources is what we called it. Somebody that's actually built this stuff, I care deeply about it. For the last 45 years, the entire developed world has punted all of their issues to this place called China. Oh, look, we're recycling. Kinda. We send all of it. This is everyone. This is everyone sends everything to China. Oh, and it worked out. It penciled out. So when they shut their doors from an economic perspective, what did that do to the entire global recycling economy? Pew! Has imperiled that model. Things are happening out there. And then also local, regional, and national policy movement. There's an old joke, as you'll see later, I'll give it away. What's the opposite of progress? This is like one of the best political jokes of all time. Congress, right? Go to any elected official, they're like, oh, it's the opposite of progress. Or Congress like, oh. You'll get like a belly laugh. You'll get a guffaw out of them. Like, we like that one, right? So there are issues, I think, and you'll hear, again, I'm biased. I think that cities have the opportunity to lead. Yes, at times you will get catalytic movement out of the federal government. Things like the EPA creation, the Clean Air and the Clean Water Act. By the way, who created that? Richard Nixon, ladies and gentlemen. Ah, yes. Who solved, anyone from the Northeast? Y'all remember acid rain? Who solved acid rain? Jimmy Carter? Was it Obama? Who was it? Who were the two in between? It was Ronnie and Bush 1. They created a pro-business thing called cap and trade. Created by the Republicans. Interesting, right? As a pro-business orientation, it actually got rid of acid rain ahead of schedule and actually made businesses more fit. Remember, I like having a little fun with policy and history as well. So things are happening on a national, regional, and on a local basis. So you do get some catalytic movement on a national basis. I generally like to say that cities are where stuff happens. There's an old saying, pardon my French for a moment, mayors get shit done. Why? Because guess what? They have to. D or R, doesn't matter. You got to pay cops. You got to fix streets. If you live in Chicago and your elected official in township doesn't plow the roads in winter, next election cycle, that is held against, like they are voted out of office for not plowing roads. We're not talking like social care and education, for plowing roads. So just by nature of these cities having to be transactional, they get things done. And they tend to, because it's less vociferous and they're more connected to their residents and stakeholders, they tend to act in a more progressive manner. There's three big components in this word diagram here. Raise a hands. Who can name one of the three largest words that you see in there? Raise up. Classroom management, boys and girls, right? Raise a hands. Who's got one? Sir? Brand. Like it? I will call on you. Yes, in the back? I see you right there with the glasses. Revenue. And?
Risk.
Wonderful. Okay. It's like Simon Says, right? Revenue, risk, and brand. If there's nothing else that you remember from my discussion today, I'm to burn these words into your gray matter. Revenue, risk, and brand. So, when I talk about sustainability, I am a practitioner. So I believe deeply in this. Did you hear the names of my children? Connor Tennyson, Madeline Millay. Connor's first name was actually, so like, remember my wife did all the hard work for this, right? When he was born, were two names. It was either Connor or Emerson. For Ralph Waldo Emerson, the best transcendentalist poet we've ever had. All right, Emerson's orientation of God was, if you want to know God, go to nature. That was his orientations with regard to transcendentalism, right? That everything around us, nature is our spirituality. So I almost named my child after that, for that explicit reason. So I assure you, I'm as eco as it also gets, but I'm also a practitioner. So I'm interested in how do we have the bleeding edge, but how do we actually interface and mesh those gears on a flywheel? Because we can talk about it, or we can do it. I do like talking, and we need movement, we need that, but I want action and movement as well. So when I think about sustainability, I try and go through that lens of three things: revenue, risk, and brand. Now, as we talked about this global economy, even cities, they kind of run on money, right? If I walk into a CFO's office, and I'm like, probably gonna be an old white guy statistically, right? Let's use Bob as an example. Hey, Bob, I really want you to care about the polar bears. It's gonna cost you a lot of money, and nobody's gonna know anything that we do. What's Bob gonna say? Take a hike. However, if I walk over and I say, hey, Bob, I've got a really interesting alliance that I think we can forge. It's going to open up a new line of revenue and business development. It's going to ingratiate us to public policymakers and keep a regulatory authority out of our wheelhouse. And we're going to look really great when we do it and launch this on a public campaign. What's Bob going to say? Tell me more. I'm talking about the exact same program to Bob. I've changed the words and approach. Make no confusion of the words, right, and the action. You have to be smart. You can have it in your heart, burning desire. It's not about me. It's about getting that action done. So when I interface with major companies and elected officials in city management, I have to attenuate my language, remember that Rosetta Stone, to their language. How do I lead with a carrot, lag with a stick? Anyone here ever try and move a donkey? You can do it a couple of ways, right? You can put a really tasty zanahoria right in front of that thing, carrot en español. It'll want to move towards that. I can spank the donkey sometimes too, right? What happens if I spank the donkey too hard? It will kick me back, right? So knowing when to lead with a carrot and push with a stick at the right time and language is very important. So I think about it like this. Those three things together, if you made this a Venn diagram right in the middle, you could call that sustainability. But I also think when you push those three things, you create opportunity. Let me give you a quick evolution of corporate sustainability as we're going to be talking a little bit about business today. So don't get me wrong. I love business. I love the word profit. When you marry it with the word principles. My mother was a Delaware born and raised Quaker. My father was a West Coast capitalist from Huntington Beach. You're like, what? They met at DU in Denver doing their MBA, and you end up with me like the executive hippie, right? So from a business basis, don't get me wrong, business has absolutely gotten us into many of the pickles that we're in today. Fair, right? But I believe very deeply when you align issues of corporate opportunity with things like restoration of the environment, justice and equity, and if it can drive those three things, revenue, risk, and brand, what will a company want to do? All of those things. It will naturally want to do that. By the way, it's empirically proven a company that uses sustainability as strategy outperforms other organizations. We're going to get to some of this. So, quick background. Anyone remember Milton Friedman, the iconoclast economist from the Chicago School of Economics? Quite conservative, right? He opined the saying that is very famous, the business of business is hot dog. Look at you, raging capitalists in this room at the Humanist Society. Woo! Don't let the secret get out, okay. The business of business is business. Friedman opined he can't be burdened with the social contract. Get off of my back, government and nonprofits. My job isn't to care about the world, people, or the environment. My job is to make widgets and do services. In fact, if you're making me do stuff, that's lowering my profitability. Let me pay my workers more money. Trickle-down economics, right? Voodoo economics, right? So, in this perspective, Friedman was actually, he's a very smart individual. Many of his opinions are actually very intelligently written. You then pivot to somebody like Peter Drucker. All right, so Milton Friedman, if Velociraptor goes extinct, you come out of here, Peter Drucker, the Stone Age ends not for lack of stones. Peter Drucker, remember the Claremont School of Management over in California? Trees and PhDs is what they call it. Drucker basically said, we can't separate ourselves from the social compact. An organization behaves properly if it does well and it does good. Now, he's been proven right over time. Organizations that actually use a strategy and lens to care about people, internal and external, and the world in which they sit, outperform other organizations. He's kind of the father of ethical management back in the day. Oh, sorry about that, pardon me. We kind of start moving forward. We get the environmental movement and risk mitigation, the Nixon and Bush era. We start getting folks here coming out of the East Coast. Michael Porter, kind of another management philosopher, talking about creating shared value with organizations, internal and external. You just start seeing in the last couple of years an interesting perspective that some of the capital markets and indices. Anyone here like money? That would hopefully be all of you as you like fed and like put money in your gas tank and things like that, right? The capital markets have caught wind of this. This is no longer a bunch of eco-modernists trying to picket organizations. The biggest of businesses and capital organizations are starting to care. So you started seeing things like transparency and disclosure, and you start coming up now. So I call this the shareholder advocacy and institutional inquiry, the awakening, right? This is where we're gonna be here in the future. There are organizations, and you'll see a picture of them. Anyone know who Larry Fink is? If I say it, he's an old white guy, stale, pale, and male. He is the CEO of an organization, raise your hands if you know this one, called BlackRock. Has anyone ever heard of them? BlackRock is the world's largest asset fund manager. That means you, perhaps, so BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. You heard any of those folks? Correct. You maybe have a retirement account with some of those folks. They don't own the money. They are asset managers of your assets. But some countries, whole countries, give these companies their entire sovereign wealth fund to say like, well, you invest it. Make us money. Do you remember the movie Wall Street with Gordon Gekko? Lunches for Wimps. Remember that? Larry Fink, invoking a religious term, is like the Pope of money, right? Now, certainly, if you're Catholic and you see the Pope come out with something, or even in here in the humanist room, we can appreciate that the Pope is a pretty big deal to people, right? Correct. Just like if I showed you a picture of the Dalai Lama, you're like, wow, that person's a big deal to a lot of folks. Larry Fink is the Pope of finance. So for the last 3 years, Larry Fink has had an increasing letter to shareholders, and he basically expressly says now, climate change is real. This is as Wall Street gets, ladies and gentlemen. If Larry Fink, who's the CEO, let's say you were the CEO of a Fortune 100 company, let's say you're on your 30th wedding anniversary in Turks and Caicos, I'll make it up, right? Some candlelit dinner. And all of a sudden your phone goes bzz, bzz, and it shows Larry Fink. What are you going to tell your spouse? Pardon me. It's like God. Do you remember that movie with John Denver, right? Like when God calls him on the telephone. Remember that? Wasn't that a film? Right? It's like, whoa, ho, excuse me. Hey, Larry. It's like getting a direct telephone call from a higher power or something like this. Point being that these capital markets, yes, they have a long way to go, but the finance people recognize it drives revenue, mitigates risk, and helps brand. Those are our table stakes. So let's take a look here. 90% of your Fortune 500 companies disclose sustainability in material. These are some wonky things via reports and other mechanisms. Now, how well they're doing certainly is up for debate and discussion, right? Some are phoning it in still, true. Some are actually leading. But 90% of these organizations are taking the first step of disclosure and transparency. I cannot underscore how important that is. Do you remember our former Justice Brandeis? He once opined sunlight is the best disinfectant. What happens when you turn the lights on at 5 in the morning in the kitchen? What do cockroaches do? Same thing at 2 a.m. if you went to nightclubs back in the day, right? Remember that? I see you in you're like, yes, all right. Oh, whoa, okay. Everyone runs away. Sunlight is a great disinfectant. If you have the ability to make better informed decisions because information is provided, markets will typically equalize and go towards that, just by transparency. As opposed to hiding it, if you're compelled or voluntarily sharing it, if we had to all share our skeletons this morning, do you think we'd think of each other differently or our behavior and patterns would be different? Correct. 100% of those Fortune 500s have a chief sustainability officer, director, manager, or equivalent. Again, I'll come back to some are doing better than others, right? But they at least are taking the first step. Equities and exchanges participate in what are called ESG, environmental, social, and governance disclosures. Folks like the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. Remember here, like the Dow Jones is up or down. There's an invite-only index called the DJSI. Intel, kind of a big employer here in the Valley, right? Do you take them to be kind of like, well, they must know their stuff. They're a global business. They were invited. First year, they didn't get in. Intel itself had a 120-page application to get on that. Now what this shows, and by the way, the DJSI Sustainability Index outperforms the regular DJ by 4 to 6% annually. That is called material. If you can get 6% better investment, do you think an asset manager will care about that? Holy sweet dancing, yes, Moses, they will. They'll be like, you make 6% more. It's because the company has reduced their risk profile. They know where their trash is going. They have a long-term strategy of sourcing their electricity from sustainable sources. They have a human rights policy. These businesses are using sustainability as a strategy. And then the top 3 institutional investors, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, collectively, so BlackRock alone, $7.5 trillion of assets under management. Collectively, they own about $19 trillion in money. That is a lot of cash. The 3 of those Wall Street people actually believe in sustainability. You know what? Now again, they're getting there. BlackRock this year, remember Larry, the Pope of Finance? He said actively, if you're an organization not doing sustainability, we are going to start actively voting against you during what is called proxy season. Have you ever heard of shareholder resolutions? All right, so that's a proxy vote. Now, BlackRock has taken some flack for not voting for climate stuff in the past. true, they're starting to turn that boat. Where if you as a company, they're like, yeah, I don't believe in climate change. BlackRock's going to be like, oh, really? We own 15% of your company. Now, if somebody owns 15% of your company, are you going to listen to them? Correct. Because if they issue guidance, it's all finance gobbledygook speak, we're looking a little bearish on company X. We might issue a hold recommendation as opposed to a buy. Or let alone, gee whiz, these people are trashy on sustainability. We're going to unload some shares. If BlackRock sells shares in your company because of that, what is the entire rest of the market going to do? When everyone sells your shares, remember Econ 101, what happens to your share price? Pew! Share price times number of shares equals market capitalization. That's also known as your corporate worth. When it hits the tank, what's going to happen to the entire senior management team? They're going to have a vocational paradigm shift. Correct. Revenue. That's Larry right there. Risk and a brand. More so than ever, millennials, by the way, millennial in the upcoming generation will be 32% of the entire voting eligible population within the next 5 years. So when they start demanding that organizations do well and do good, because who's really in charge of the company? It's not the CEO, it's the shareholders. Now, mind you, most of that money is owned by other companies like BlackRock, but they are coming under fire because if your company is known to pollute, known to have a bad human rights policy, there's this thing called social media, right? Do you remember back in the day, 40 years ago, it's like, you know what? We had to write this down and put it in a publication once a month that was static. This is daily, hourly, by the minute, new information can come out and circulate the globe in 10 minutes. So transparency, like I said, is a wonderful thing. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Let's move to cities here. So table stakes on this. Revenue, risk, brand. In city parlance, we call it economic development, right? We want to bring new companies and organizations in. Mitigate and manage risk. That typically translates as reducing taxpayer cost and burden. Because are cities and businesses the same? No. Now, at times, some individuals think cities should act like businesses. Having been a guy on the inside, remember, capitalist dad, Quaker mother, I believe that cities can and should take a few pages from the playbook of business, but they are not a business. There is no research and development organization within a city. If they blow a bunch of money on a project and it doesn't pan out, guess what you've lost? Head Start programs. Homeless shelter funding. There is a different fiduciary responsibility of cities. Generally, now I think that cities can and should be a bit more innovative, okay? I think that businesses should be a bit more sensitive to the realities of the public good, right? Because the role of a government is to take care of everyone. Businesses can selectively choose who their customers are, right? Do businesses have to sell products and services for everyone? Can't afford it? No problem, that's not in our making a model, you're not my customer. I'm gonna focus on you because you have a higher net worth and we're gonna sell to you specifically. I choose what to do. The role of government, and I believe this myself, is to take care of the least amongst us. How do we have a world that helps all people? And are we judged as a people, not by how we treat those with haves, but how do we treat those with have-nots? So government, to me, has a different role, mechanism, and orientation than enterprise. They do have to save money. And then advancing brand, we call that sense of place, creating a place that people are proud of. Now, I'm a Phoenix native. I was born and raised here. I remember when downtown Phoenix and downtown Mesa, the sidewalks used to roll up at 5 p.m. Nothing there. I've seen a lot of change in this place. Don't get me wrong, Phoenix certainly has its fair share of things. When I'm saying big P Phoenix, I'll say kind of the whole region. We have a lot of things we need to get right still. Truth. But we've come a long way. Phoenix is actually a pretty decent place, and it's got I'd say on the balance of things, a pretty good brand. Let's talk about the totality of cities here. Globally, over 55% of the world's population live within municipal areas, and that is rapidly increasing. So we are shifting from being producers to consumers. That's interesting. I want to leave the farm, Mom, and move into the big city and make my record, right? Was that anyone? No? Anyone here drink coffee? Okay. Let's talk about something existential to like the survival of the world. Coffee, right? Remember, no coffee, the world grinds to a halt. Starbucks, using business as an example. Starbucks is often maligned for the eponymous cup. Yes? Anyone here think, oh, Starbucks and the recycling, as I see all of us using these disposable cups this morning. So Starbucks is maligned on that. Fair. A lot of cups. On a global waste perspective, they are not the biggest issue. But how about this? Yes, they have a trash issue. One of the most existential things to their company is actually climate change. And it's expressly stated. Because two things, as the latitudes change, coffee only grows in what are literally called the coffee latitudes. You ever notice it's like Guatemalan coffee, Kenyan coffee, oh look, like Indonesian coffee, same latitudes across the entire. Anyone get like Icelandic coffee? This one's called Bjork, right? This one is called, no? There's no Icelandic coffee. As latitudes are actually shifting, coffee cherries, because this is a cherry, can't grow. One. Two, how about from a human rights perspective? Talking about caring and moving here, leaving rural areas, going to municipal ones. This is an agrarian lifestyle. Was anyone actually grew up working a farm? I got shipped off every year. My mother was a poor teacher here, single mom, would ship me off to Aurora, Colorado, back when it used to be farmland, to work the family farm. First 2 or 3 days, I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm riding the John Deere. And then the third day, you're like, I can't leave. I'm an indentured servant. It was like, oh, you want food? Thou shalt work. You're like, oh, very good, Grandpa. Wonderful. Think about this for your coffee. Think about Central Colombia. Working in the farm is a butt-kicking endeavor. You are up early, working all day. Anyone here want to go back to full-time agricultural farming? One, maybe-ish, okay. You guys are outliers, I would say, statistically speaking. They're like, dude, they're outliers anyway, okay? No, I like you guys. I see you over there. People are leaving. They're like, you know what? This is a hard, laborious lifestyle. I want to move into Bogota. If they don't have people to do this stuff, being producers, to actually create, grow, cultivate, and roast the coffee, their entire supply chain is at risk. So even a company like, yes, they care about their renewable energy sourcing, but they are building hospitals, schools, and entertainment for these rural villages in order to attract and retain members in the community. If you don't have people out there, you can't functionally grow coffee, right? People are moving from rural areas to cities at a higher and higher rate. 90% of those global cities are coastal in nature. 100 miles or less from a coastal floodplain. What is continuing to happen to global temperatures? Again, Manhattan, add 4 feet of water. Interesting. 90% of those cities are prone to risk of flooding. And our cities, 70% of the global emissions come from cities. So when you want to talk about getting stuff done, business, the power of the capital markets, and focusing on a city. If you want more bike lanes, and when I got to the city, right, I was the highest appointed person, still am in the history of the city on a policy base. I own 13 bicycles at home. Yeah, to my family. I also have a wonderful 1967 Ford Fairlane GT 500. I am not anti-car. Correct, yeah, like, see, you're like on a good day 6 miles to the gallon, right? That's a beautiful American muscle car, right? 3-speed transmission. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Can you smell that rich combustion? Oh yeah, cruising like that. My wife and I did our engagement pictures in that vehicle. We're the original owners, actually. You're like, you look great. The family owners, first original owners. So point being here, I'm not anti-car. when I get to the city, all of the bike lobby, the all-powerful bicycle lobby, right? That's a joke, right? It's like 5 people, like Gene showed up, it was wonderful. And they're like, we want more bike lanes. I was like, so do I. Okay, well, where do you want to put them? We don't know. Here's the reality. Bike lanes, just restriping the road, $50,000 bucks. That's just restriping. You want to do what's called curb and gutter, because the best bike lanes are what are called protected bike lanes, right? It's a physical barrier between this thing called an automobile, pedestrians, right? You could have a concrete curb, and then bikes. Give or take 500 to a million a mile. Because think about the civil engineering and infrastructure, it's actually a lot. So I'm not anti-bike, or should be anti-car, but I asked them, I said, instead of being car versus bike, remember that system question on Haiti? I said, ask yourself this, how do you move goods, ideas, peoples, and services safely, effectively, affordably, and efficiently? It's not one versus the other, because right after this, I'm taking my family camping in Safford, up near Mount Graham. Literally, I'm driving home, changing into shorts, out we're going for 3 days. Am I going to take the bus to Safford with 2 kids in tow and a bunch of crap? I could. I'll be there next Tuesday, right? Not going to happen. I'm going to drive my individual vehicle or Dodge Durango, right? So in certain instances, it's okay. But your cities, 70%. So if you want more bike lanes, did I tell the individuals and the mayor, like, guess what? We should totally go to the Congress of the United States to get more bike lanes. Is your congressperson going to give you more bike lanes? It's your mayor, right? Cities get stuff done. If you want to see policy change, if you want to see regional rules with regard to energy procurement, transportation, food, all that, building portfolio and energy efficiency. Yes, you can get Keystone Issues done on Congress. Those happen in a much fewer and further between time period, right? Remember, that pendulum is here right now in the current administration. What do pendulums always do? They swing like this, right? You will get a pendulum shift. So while certain things are being dismantled on a federal basis now, it's inevitable, right? It will shift back, and if that's the case, whether this year or in 4 years from now, right? Let's be pragmatists, right? You're going to get movement. And on the balance of things, it's all that arc of environmental protection, or rather I should say that screw on the balance has always tightened. And companies and cities know this. So cities have a massive responsibility for this sort of stuff. Even recently, the city of Flagstaff, Tucson signed the climate crisis sign-on. City of Phoenix has not done that. City of Phoenix, however, is one of the signatories to what's called the C40, so the largest cities globally that have responsibility for this. Now, mind you, in our governance model, who actually runs the cities here? The mayor, right? Who said that in the back? City manager. The mayor of any one of these cities is not the CEO. Can your mayor individually make you more bike lanes? No. Here? No. It's your city manager that controls the actual enterprise of the government. Your mayor is the chairperson of the city council, right? Interesting difference. It's not like Chicago, Boston, or New York where they have what's called a strong mayor. We have a council manager form of governance here. That being said, cities have a role, responsibility, and opportunity to do this. Let me frame this as we go forward to over 2030. This is from the World Economic Forum. I'll read this to you as we get bigger. So table stakes on the city. 2035 projected GDP. Let's focus on the left here. Top cities globally projected GDP. New York, Tokyo, LA, London, Shanghai, Beijing, Paris, Chicago, Copenhagen, Shenzhen. New York, 2.5 trillion annual GDP. By the way, do you remember how much BlackRock has under management? 7.4. Remember that. The power of business has gotten us into some of these pickles. It can, I'm not saying it can, if done well, help lead us out. It's going to take a lot of things. It's a complex constellation. 2.5 trillion. I want to juxtapose that against this. Projected population. Jakarta, Tokyo, Chongqing, Dhaka, Shanghai, Karachi, Kinshasa, that's in the DRC, by the way, Lagos, Mexico City, Mumbai. From a north-south perspective, all these places tend to be in the north. Economic powerhouses, highly developed. How about a lot of these places? Lower capacity. Do any of these align to any of those? Financial epicenters, population centers. Jakarta, 38 million. How about this? Anyone been to Lagos or Karachi or Kinshasa? How about Mumbai?
Been there.
Great place for a lot of people. It's going to have 23 million people living in that city. When I showed you that this one right here, global emissions, percent living in cities. So more and more from a public policy basis, your cities, your local areas and locus of government and impact are going to be these cities. All right, let's reframe this a little bit and we'll kind of head for home, open up some discussion here. All right, revenue and innovation, risk and efficiency, brand and engagement. Remember those three things? Revenue, risk, brand. I want to burn that into your brain. You can hate business, fair. There's a lot of things about business, and I'm the business guy that I do not like. It's undeniable that this is an omnipresent thing. And if you can align those orientations of business to do well and do good, wait a minute, we can make more money off of this? We should do more. Yes, you should. I will take action over inaction. Now, I want to shoot for the moon, but I want stuff moving forward. And as well, by the way, remember like the capital markets and businesses go this way, do they tend to go backwards? Are we currently operating the same way that we did 50 years ago as an enterprise? No. They want to value engineer things. They don't go backwards. They want to move forward. All right, let's change this. I'll break these out a little bit here. On the revenue and innovation, if you're a sustainability change agent, right, you're a problem solver. Individuals, so I do this consultancy with companies, they see beyond the four walls. Remember Peter Drucker? It's not just the role of the enterprise. How do they actually sit within and with the community? There are builders and doers, and actually using sustainability as a strategic differentiator. I will actually invoke Shell Oil. Oh, so actually they and BP are probably the two most progressive extractive hydrocarbon organizations in the world. I said the most progressive. I didn't say good, mind you, right? So Shell, we all love, who loves fracking? Depends on where you're from, right? So undeniably, natural gas has vaulted. So I taught a course with disclosure for 6 years with the CEO of Shell North America, a guy named John Hoffmeister. Now he and I, as you can probably imagine, did not always see eye to eye. He's actually a really good guy, right? He's met my family. I've met his. He still lives in Houston. And on the balance of things, good fella. He left Shell. He actually wrote a book, Why We Hate the Oil Companies. You know what his thoughts on oil are? Got to get rid of it. He's like, this stuff's stinky, man. Like, it's bad stuff. But the reality is, again, optimism, right? Like, where do we want to go? Altruism versus like, what's the reality and the pragmatic movement to do that? He's like, this stuff stinks. We got to get rid of it. The current reality is our entire infrastructure is predicated on this stuff. Like the world. We cannot like that, but we have to understand that. And once we understand that, you can then create the plan to change, right? Hoping it changes is not a plan to actually change it. So Shell, years ago, up in Pennsylvania, when fracking became a big thing, now mind you, do you remember who invented fracking? It was your Department of Energy. To actually help create American energy independence. Yeah. So they created fracking. So instead of going straight down, you bend the tube, right? Instead of going down in a well, you make it horizontal, you get more square footage. So people like Shell, now their contractor at the time was Halliburton. So on the balance of things, they actually, because this is a sophisticated organization, some of the world's best engineers work for hydrocarbon organizations, right? Like imagine like the global geoengineering issues to like get weird stuff out of weird places, that's incredibly difficult in reality. They have very smart people. They actually care because they get the risk issue here. If they pollute, do you think they're going to generally get in trouble? Yeah, not good for the brand either. Remember the BP Macondo well blowout? How did that go for BP? Do you remember Volkswagen and the Dieselgate? They lost 2/3 of their share price. They saw 15 years of corporate gains evaporate in 48 hours. Evaporate. Oh, by the way, people went to jail. All the senior management team is out. That's a serious deal. They're still not entirely recovered, right? Because they were lying. As opposed to being, all right, let's maybe do this ahead of time instead of get caught. So Shell actually, trust me, does want to be a decent actor. Now at the time, because this was when like fracking was going gangbusters. Anyone here own a big truck? Anyone got a truck? Got a truck, wonderful. You're hired. Anyone here watch YouTube? Great, you're hired. We're going to use your truck. You're the brains of the organization because you can watch YouTube. And can anyone here rent equipment legally? Fantastic. In the back, you're hired as well. The three of us are going to create a fracking company. Not joking. We're going to take your truck, rent a giant piece of equipment. We're going to read about it. We're going to go out to the middle of nowhere, and we're going to build a gas well. That's actually what people did. And they would leave the gas well open. Methane emissions, right? Water discharge polluting the environment, like really bad actors. Like people who, oh, and they're like, I can make a bunch of money off this, let's do it. I don't care about any of the consequences. Now there's that old saying, one bad apple can spoil the bunch. Pennsylvania legislature was getting some serious heat from the environmentalists. Like, this is terrible. Fair. What did Shell do? Did they want their entire model to be at peril? You know what they did? They called the Environmental Defense Fund, EDF. They said, we want you to help propose a set of voluntary best practice industry standards. What should we be doing? Shell paid for it. EDF created these standards. What did they do? They spoon-fed them up to the state legislature. Gee whiz, there's some bad actors out there. They should not be doing this. They should be doing this. Do you think Shell is already doing all those things? Yes. So the state legislature took it. They're like, Now, if it came directly from Shell, shameless hack job, right? EDF. Y'all know these folks? Very well respected. Co-collaborated on this. Do you remember their motto back in the day used to be sue the bastards? It's literally what it was. There was an unofficial motto. Now they collaborate. They spoon-fed it. What did the legislature turn around and do? Made it law. What did it do virtually overnight? Helped weed out the really egregious actors. Now I'm not talking about whether fracking and methane is good or not, but I'm talking about this as a differentiator, right? So they were already doing better. That's an example of a traditional hydrocarbon organization. Now that was 10 years ago when I was teaching this course. As of late, remember those financial institutions? Wells Fargo, by the way, just joined on because they've gotten a lot of flack for this, saying that they are not going to invest in hydrocarbon and extractive industries. So if your chief finance organizations are the ones that run these companies at the end of the day, BlackRock's going to do it, Vanguard, State Street. If they start pulling their financing and their capital out for their investors, like, yeah, we're not going to do that, these people are going to awaken. Now, I'll tell you, Shell, they're very smart. They recognize they want to be an energy company, an oil company. They actually have scenarios and plans. They're world famous in business planning for this. It's called their scenarios. They have ideas of like, they literally say like, what's a future with no oil? Fair, but can that company exist? They actually take their like, it's either going to get really hard to get out of the ground, it'll be socially out of vogue, or it'll be illegal. And if any of those happen, can this company exist? Like they actually think about that. Let's talk about risk and efficiency. I often think about this from a cost savings perspective. If you want to go to a company or a city, for a variety of reasons, anyone know what EBITDA is? Earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. This is a very kind of nerdy finance thing. It's very important to a lot of companies, especially if you're publicly traded. One of the best ways to increase your value is to reduce costs. Because think about this. If you want to do more business, you get this. Hey, we want to sell more stuff. There's that old saying, there's a cost to doing business, right? If you sell $100 in new stuff, maybe it costs you $10 to operate the business, net 90, right? What if you can actually just save 40 bucks? You've actually created $400 in value. And it's much easier to reduce an expense than it is to actually generate new money. So if you can talk to a company like energy efficiency, like, turn the lights off, Bob. It saves money. Like, oh, did we have to buy new technology to do that? No, it's amazing. It's called this like brain-finger interface model, right? Like, oh, we save money. That was easy. Duh, right? So expense reduction, if you typically start there, of where you can eviscerate cost, any organization that is singing their same music, they're like, oh, we want to save money. Think of it from that perspective. Costs, interestingly, when you track them to things like environmental impacts, energy, right, is one of the largest users and consumers of money for a company. Where does most of our electricity come from? Fossil fuels. Reduce the cost, reduce the use of fossil fuels. Brand, you can be cogent and compelling. Companies are recognizing that they can attract more people, especially a younger demographic, when they're honest and transparent. For years, companies and governments, and they're not all the way there, I assure you, the corporate secretary, which is charged with like keeping things sometimes secret, in your general counsel in a company, they would always say, well, there's a risk to disclosure. If we let people know, that's risky. That conversation is now shifting. Some internal and some push from the outside to what is the risk if we don't disclose? The question is now being had, what do you have to hide? And if you have nothing to hide, you'd be open. All right, I'm going to break down here. Here's my big four. You want to make some serious top-line dents in the world? Solve any one of these four issues. Global energy, transportation and movement, your global food system, and then you need to have some negative carbon capture. Which you have to, we're above our budget, we got to suck stuff back out of the environment, right? So here, there's four sections. We're actually going to break this up. So these big four: energy, suck it out of the environment, food, and transportation. Just the agricultural movement, so some of these are linked to each other. Your agricultural food systems enterprise is about 40% of your global GHGs, greenhouse gases. Your food, this isn't the meat versus non-meat conversation. It's just the transportation and logistics conversation, right? Not only moving food, but how about all those fertilizers that we use? Those are synthetically made. If you want to create nitrogenous-based fertilizers, that actually uses a ridiculous amount of energy to make that fertilizer, if you understand the science. It's unbelievable. So the energy budget, some of these are interrelated. Food and movement, highly correlated, right? And energy as well. But let's talk about energy production as a whole sector. All right, we need four big things here. We need more of it, we need more efficiency, we need more education, and we need better infrastructure. Now, I'll tell you, 10 years ago when I was teaching this global energy course, it was actually national energy policy of how do we get the U.S. essentially to a carbon-free energy future. 10 years ago, I was actually bullish on expansion of natural gas. How dare you? At the time, the cost economics of things like solar and battery didn't pencil out. 10 years now, I'd tell you, if you wanted to build a new natural gas plant, even just the finance people, so we call this a stranded asset. Anyone know what that means? How about your mortgage of your house? What happens if a tornado comes through, and let's say you got 15 years left on your mortgage, blows your house away? Do you still owe your mortgage? Yep. Correct. Same thing with a power plant. Are these things cheap to make, do you think? They are super expensive, these big shiny things. Like, these are massive capital projects, folks, that they typically budget over 30 years. Interesting. Typical capital planning lifespan of a utility. So if you build a new thing, and they rate base that. They're like, great, this big shiny thing, we're going to charge you a little bit. Do you pay the full cost of your mortgage right now in your house? Little installments, just like a car payment. Same thing with all of our power production. That being said, what if it was illegal to live in your house? In 15 out of your 30 years, you're like, I can't live there, it's unsafe, make it up, but I still owe money on the thing? I'll tell you, build a new natural gas plant now, we could use the energy. I'll say that source of power is less bad, didn't say good, it's less bad. Remember, less bad and more good aren't the same thing, right? How about driving a Prius? Less bad. Walk. Take the bus, something like that. So if it's less bad, fine. But that thing probably in 5 to 10 years, it's possible from a policy basis, it might not be allowed. You'd still owe the mortgage on that thing, right? So if you want to build a new thing now, I'll tell you, man, just from a risk, forget the environment side. Just the money people are looking at this from a risk perspective, and they're like, you mean you want us to finance this, but it might not be allowed in the future? That's a really dumb investment. That's just bad business. So they're pivoting to things like solar and battery backup. All right, so we need more energy. Remember that population growth curves? There are more people every single day. We need more energy, predominantly from fossil fuel-free sources. How about efficiency? There's an old saying, the Stone Age did not end for lack of stones, right? So in that case, is anyone here currently like driving in like a 67 Fairlane on a daily basis? No, we've become more efficient. Anyone here currently have your refrigerator from the Eisenhower administration? Do you remember that stuff, the harvest gold and the avocado green? Yeah, and it hummed like its own like substation transformer. You're like, whoa, there's a lot of juice going through that. Anyone currently using an air conditioner that's 30 years old? Okay. What if you added a brand new air conditioner? Your energy bills would drop significantly just from an efficiency base. So things like efficiency, building new shiny solar panels, I love them. You know what I sometimes call solar panels? Green bling. Why? Don't we love solar panels?
They're free.
Well, they certainly are not free. Well, so the sun's free, but the solar panels are not.
No.
But what can you do? You can look at a solar panel. You can go and touch it. Like, look, here's my solar panel, right? What do you like to tell people if you have solar on your roof? That you have solar on your roof, right? It's like an old joke. How do you know someone's a vegan? They'll tell you, right? It's a joke, right? Like, oh, I'm vegan. It's okay, right? I've got solar panels, right? That costs a lot. You know what's far cheaper? Not using energy in the first place. If you simply have trees that shade, anyone got that window in your house that points west, southwest? And no matter what, it is always bloody hot in that room? What if it wasn't oriented like that? What if we had better insulation? If you don't have to even use energy in the first place, globally, you actually don't need to make new power plants. Interesting. If we became, there's a guy named Amory Lovins from the Rocky Mountain Institute, very smart individual, great shop, kind of the godfather of energy efficiency, really opines this. If we maximize a lot of our energy efficiency here, even on a domestic basis, we could virtually shut off all current fossil fuel production. And it would be way cheaper and much more economical than building green bling. I love solar panels, love them, want them. We're going to need more energy. It's not one or the other here. We've got to do all of these. We need way more efficiency. Number two, this thing called education. So shameless plug for the School of Sustainability. Certainly we have bachelor's degrees online. We have ongoing master's degrees online, right? Send your kids, your grandkids, your friends. You can do it. We have certificates, a 3-day event coming up. Does anyone teach energy in school? State of Oklahoma does. Oh, yeah. Who sponsors it? The Oklahoma Oil and Gas Administration. So they literally, I'm not joking, there's like this great elementary school presentation. It's called Meet Petro Pete. Little guy. I swear to God, right? It's wonderful. Meet Petro Pete. And this little dog, I forget, it's like Digger or something, right? They're like, hydrocarbons create jobs and opportunity, blah, blah, blah. It's a major economic source for the state of Oklahoma. Nobody teaches about this. In fact, let's be honest. Do any of you care about energy? Do you care? Do you think of, with a point of disclosure, when I did my graduate school thesis, one of the members on my committee, remember I'm more of a practitioner, so I had a tenure faculty member who has to oversee this sort of stuff, but I had 3 community and industry leaders, right, people doing this work. One of them was from an energy utility. And the individual says to me, we're having cocktails, he's grilling me, right? Colin, what kind of business am I in? You're in the energy production business. Wrong. Ooh. What business am I in? The service business, right? Wrong. I was like, no. I am in the cold beer and hot shower business. Did any of you this morning when you woke up at 6 o'clock be like, is that light going to turn on? I don't know. Or when you did it, you're like, oh man, I'm so bummed that 30% of these are coming from coal, 20 from natural gas. Bummer. Now, most people only care about their energy if their beer isn't cold or their shower's not hot. It's fascinating, right? When you think about the realities of this. So how do we deliver that? How do we educate, right? And then infrastructure. Ever hear of the smart grid? It's a very dumb grid. Most of our infrastructure is from the Eisenhower administration, honest to God. Just from an efficiency base. Anyone here have a background in electrical engineering? A little bit. You don't lose energy. It's called impedance, right? Inefficiency in the line. Let's say a power plant makes 100 units. Over here, big wire. Let's call it home. I'm making this fairly easy. Only 85 units get to your house. It has to make 100, and you only get 85. So if you want 100, it's got to make $1.15 or more. Just because it bleeds off, it gets lost in the system. Almost all of the grid is old as dust. It's also incredibly vulnerable to risk, right? And frankly, national security. I'll start wrapping this up. Ending thoughts. I don't believe that sustainability is about indignation. I don't think it's about less. I don't always think it's about austerity. I don't want to believe that it's about telling people what you can't do. You can't do that. You can't do that. One of the most dangerous things we can do is whip out the worst thing in the world. It's our finger, right? What do you do with a finger? You point. You. You can't do that. You can't drive that car. You can't eat that hamburger. Now, there's the reality of the impact of our choices, and we need to have agency for that. Very much so. We have to take responsibility. We have to have a paradigmatic shift in how we think and operate. Fair, locally to globally. But to me, sustainability is about beauty, opportunity, and more. Now, that is a far more difficult equation to solve. Not going to lie. But I believe you get more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. So people often have this despair, this angst. Climate change is such a massive issue. Gender stratification, what can we do? All hope is lost. Best cure for that is action. It can be massive, it can be small, but the best cure for that despair is taking action. All right, we can have some discussion. I'll leave my information up there. Thank you. All right, a couple of questions and thoughts. Oh, yes, it's Frank. All right.
I think your talk goes along with what I'm about to say. You know, people say we can't afford to get rid of carbon emissions. And I would like to remind us that around 1940, the whole Western world was in a state of depression. And would have anyone have imagined we could have afforded World War II?
Yeah. Well, how about things like child labor?
Pardon?
Child labor.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that doing the things required to get rid of carbon emission would stimulate economic growth just like World War II.
Correct.
Saved the world economy. And I was just offering, I haven't heard environmentalists say it that way, and I was just wondering if it'd be a help to have that image.
So I think, Yeah, so let's go back, you kind of rewind the clock a little bit here. Fascinating. So anyone know the U.S. Chamber of Commerce? Yes, right? The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, over 100 years ago, I think created by Grant, if I'm recalling my history here, was an explicit counter to the labor rights movement back in the day. All right, so the U.S. Chamber is the top-line pro-business lobbying enterprise in the nation. They wield a lot of power and influence, right? They went against labor. So part of the issues back in the day, to your point, like, oh, we can't get rid of like child labor. They've got small hands. They're very good for widgets, right? They're cheap. Of course we can work 16-hour days, 7 days a week. If you get rid of these cheap kids, like, business is going to die. Business got better. Families were healthier. We didn't miss work as much. People didn't die on the job, right? So a big mark here that economists and environmentalists are looking at, this is a GDP and carbon basis, is how do we decouple economic growth from carbon budgets? It's called decarbonizing the economy, right? Can you have growth? Now there's a big conversation about what is growth. Is there a fallacy of perpetual growth, blah, 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 right? But can you have a stable economy and decarbonize that? Many areas are actually moving towards that. That is not easy to do because, I'm also a realist, right? Sometimes folks are like, well, everyone's going to be utopia. There's going to be haves and have-nots here. There are going to be transition issues that are very serious. If we think about the social justice of this, anyone super happy? Now, APS, right? They said by 2030, 2032, they're going to be carbon neutral. They are already planning on retiring the Navajo generating plant, the nation's largest coal plant. Yes. Who's in for that? Who's also in for laying off 50% of the tribal fund revenue? Oh. 50% of the Navajo and 80% of the Hopi General Fund comes from the coal plant.
Get a casino.
Oh, get a casino. Are you all going to go up to Kayenta, Tuba City, Chinle? So here's the reality of some of this, right? There are some tough things that honestly I don't have the answers for, and I don't think a lot of us do. We can opine like, get rid of coal. Totally agree. Get rid of that. All of those people up there, by the way, they have the worst educational attainment, worst health outcomes, highest domestic violence rate, worst alcoholism. Let's go and take away 50% of the entire tribal fund. Correct. You watch Ken Burns' The West? Let's do it again. If we aren't conscious about how we do this and sensitive to that, there are some serious issues that could be of concern. We have to though set this moonshot. We have to decarbonize. We have to care about the environment. We have to care about people, and we have to care about our economy, right? It's not one or the other. It's all three of those things together, right? That is hard to do. It's much easier to say, get rid of coal. Oh, move back to Phoenix and get a job. If your entire life has literally been up there, can't do it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Colin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Colin, that was amazing. I was entertained and intrigued the entire time.
Appreciate it.
Want to bring you up on our proudest HSGP tradition, which is to mug our speakers.
Whoa,
so
okay.
Consider yourself officially mugged.
Thank you. Been mugged by the humanists. I like it.
And thank you so much. I hope we'll
Pleasure is
see
mine.
you
Thank
again soon.
I look forward to it. Thank you for letting me be here with you.
To everybody, unless we have any last-minute closing announcements, I want to say thank you so much for being here. If you're able to stay and help a little as we clean up and